I'm crossing the territory where this Andean civilization developed and thrived for thousands of years. There is a lot to explore and to show. I'm Bernardo Sainz, and this is Tiwanaku, the Eternal City.
The Tiwanaku culture has never been shown to the world in its true light. Only the part which was the Inca Empire and which experienced its peak during a period of just over 80 years is known. Tiwanaku, however, is where it all began. It is the great culture that existed for over 2,700 years, 3 times more than the Roman Empire. Can you even imagine how much it evolved over so many centuries? This civilization spread through much of South America without a single weapon being raised. During years of excavations, no references to war or arms have ever been found. Centuries before theories were developed about the shape of the planet Earth in the West, here in the Andes, in the area currently known as the Bolivian High Plains, this civilization accurately applied sciences such as physics, mathematics, and astronomy. Our first visit takes us to the ruins of the observatory, known as the Gallows of the Inca, on the shores of Lake Titicaca, the highest navigable lake in the world.
We are in the Gallows of the Inca. This is an astronomical observatory which was built 4,000 years ago by men. It provided knowledge about the agricultural cycles and the period of rainfall. It was discovered in 1978 by archaeologist Osvaldo Rivera.
The first researchers called it the Gallows of the Inca, assuming that this crossbar functioned as a scaffold from which to hang those who violated the law. But it was never really a gallows, nor did it belong to the Inca period. It is 4,000 years old and is one of the oldest astronomical observatories on the continent. Osvaldo Rivera, a Bolivian archaeologist, spent much of his career researching this Tiwanaku monument.
We are in the Gallows of the Inca, this prodigious monument whose use as an astronomical observatory has been proven. We're just a few seconds from intercepting the first ray of light passing through the artificial hole 21 meters away. This will precisely hit the crossbar, and in doing so, announce the dramatic moment in which winter begins at this latitude. I will try to stand in the ray of sun. Yes, this is it. This is the same ray that will illuminate the dramatic moment that is repeated every June 21st, in which the beginning of winter, the winter solstice, is marked. Well, I feel really excited. No doubt as excited as the people in this ancient civilization when they observed this wondrous miracle of nature, along with the marvel of carved stone and rock that they themselves had created.
No doubt it is a discovery that changed the theories of the first researchers. A hole in the middle of the rocks allows a ray of sunlight to be reflected on a perfectly positioned stone crossbar 21 meters away, giving a precise signal for a new winter solstice. 4,000 years later, the local inhabitants still turn to this signal from the Tiwanaku Astronomical Observatory when programming their agricultural activities. Most likely, many thousands of years more will pass in which this structure will remain standing to give the world accurate astronomical information relevant to this region of the planet.
It is not only here in the gallows of the Inca that we have evidence of significant advances in astronomy. Tiwanaku's achievements range even higher and farther into areas that are of significance to all of us.
The planned city rose from its very beginnings in the only valley that extends from east to west and is thus aligned with the daily path of the sun as it crosses the sky. All the buildings, even the most humble, has its walls perfectly aligned with respect to the four directions: east, west, north and south. This is the Temple of Kalasasaya, where you can see an enormous balconied wall which inclines slightly towards the interior of the structure.
And this means that the builders of Tiwanaku were true engineers because they had the ability to calculate the weight of the platform in order to build a retaining tilted wall.
Numerous drains in the structure remove excess rainwater from the top of the temple.
Here we can see a very nice gargoyle. This shows the ability they had to eliminate or drain rainwater.
Kilometers from the temples, in the distant mountains, there are orientation signs related to the cardinal directions.
What we see there in the distance, in the middle of the mountain, is a white spot which used to be a perfectly round hole made in Tiwanaku and filled with a white substance. This indicates for us due south.
In 1863, American archaeologist George Squire, after an expedition to Tiwanaku, wrote, "Nowhere in the world have I seen stones cut with such mathematical precision and with such admirable skill as those found in the plains of Tiwanaku." 250 years later, the precision of the work carried out by these people continues to astound the world.
The cutting and fitting together of these enormous stones is so precise that not even a pin could be placed between them. We are confident that this is the result of thousands of years of study and improvement within the Tiwanaku culture.
Yet another astounding thing we see as we continue our exploration of Tiwanaku is the huge blocks of stone that were transported regardless of weight or size.
This is an absolutely enormous stone. How did it get here? They were obviously in possession of sophisticated technology, hitherto unknown for us, although there are many hypotheses.
It would take a tremendous effort to transport these giant stones long distances even nowadays. "80 kilometers from Tiwanaku, near Lake Titicaca, we come to a major quarry of andesite stone, a place called Coyahatita.
Here we are in one of the Tiwanaku's quarries, Coyahatita.
This is the Coyahatita quarry, and what we see here is the material andesite, which is a hard material from volcanic rock from which certain types of material were extracted for blocks, pillars, etc., to be taken to Tiwanaku.
Indeed, and this is the same texture, appearance, and color that we see in Tiwanaku.
Yes, gray andesite, right? We can see it here everywhere. It is quite a different thing when it has been cut and highly polished, and so on, right?
And what is the distance between here and the place to which the stones were transported in Tiwanaku?
We are talking at least 80 kilometers in a straight line. However, they had to go around Lake Titicaca to the smaller island with this material. That is quite a journey, a real expedition. This demonstrates the power of Tiwanaku. They had materials, and when they needed them, they brought or carried them no matter how great the distance.
Even if there were thousands of people, those who...
that does not matter.
At the top of the quarry, we can see deep man-made cuts, a Tiwanaku technique developed for preparing enormous pieces of stone that could then be detached manually. A the foot of the mountain, we come across some of these stone blocks already marked to become columns for future temples. It seems that time stopped in this place, and that the men of Tiwanaku left their work half finished. We have started our journey again to the Kalasasaya temple in Tiwanaku to try out a means of communication carved in stone.
Among the unusual things found in these walls is the hole cut in the shape of a human ear. This enabled the highest authorities to listen and communicate with each other several thousand years ago. Let's do a test to see if this really works. Actually, you have to place your ear very carefully, and at a certain distance, we can hear people talking perfectly clearly on the other side.
To check the operation of this archaeological hearing aid, our team placed a microphone in order to capture sound at a given distance.
I'm about 25 feet away from the stone carved by men many centuries ago in the shape of a human ear. We want to see if we can really hear well what I'm talking about at this distance.
It was amazing how the sound of your voice was carried that distance through this stone ear. A few feet away, in the temple of Kalasasaya, we find a powerful and most representative stone monument of the Tiwanaku culture, the Gate of the Sun.
This is the Tiwanaku monument that has most traveled the world. However, we know very little about its significance until now.
It's been carved in fine detail. At the top of the door, we find a clothed, humanized figure of the sun holding two scepters of power, representing this culture's strong identification with the sun. The Tiwanaku people built an astronomical observatory on the top of the pyramid of Akapana. Through the reflection on the water of this fountain, they watched and studied the stars for centuries. They developed accurate astronomical knowledge for their time, and they captured it in the engravings as it can be seen on the Gate of the Sun. Two condor heads on the sides of the sun, with 4 points that make up the Southern Cross, following the trajectory of the Earth rotation above the pyramid of Akapana. Inside the pyramid, a rectangle shows the figure of a cougar. At first glance, it appears complete, but it really only shows the head and tail.
That means they had great skill for abstraction, synthesis. Abstraction more than anything, because they had the ability with only a few lines convey the greatest amount of concepts.
Undoubtedly, the Gate of the Sun is the representation of the calendar year. You can see that there are 12 months of the year clearly represented at the bottom of the frieze, which are fully consistent with our present-day calendar. Two trumpeters at the ends of the calendar represent the beginning and the end of the path of the sun. So we can see that this gate is in fact a model of the sun. This gate is the sun turned to stone. In the center of the ruins, still covered with dirt and in the process of excavation, we see the sacred mountain of Tiwanaku, the Pyramid of Akapana. Alan Colata, a doctor of archaeology from the University of Chicago, spent most of his career involved in the excavation and research of the Akapana pyramid at Tiwanaku.
The Pyramid of Akapana was in this sense the sacred mountain of Tiwanaku.
His research states that there was a sacred sunken courtyard in the form of a cross-shaped square on the 7th level of Akapana, which was aligned with the 4 cardinal directions.
Our excavations in this courtyard have revealed an unexpected and sophisticated system of underground channels. These channels carried water collected at the top of Akapana down through the 7 levels. In reality, the system installed by the architects of Akapana, although obviously functional, is something far beyond an object of pragmatic engineering.
Acapana, 7 levels, 200 meters long, 17 meters high, oriented to the 4 cardinal points, blocks of stone, metal plates, and paintings.
Acapana was the main sanctuary of the Pachamama, Mother Earth, which became an icon of fertility and agricultural abundance. It was the mountain in the center of the island, and, by extension, the world.
Therefore, it is natural that this sacred pyramid is positioned in the center of the Gate of the Sun and represents our planet.
That's why Acapana was the Waka, the revered mountain that encapsulated their concepts of human origin, creation, and greatness. It had supreme significance for the Tiwanaku people in terms of their sacred history.
These intricately carved vertical structures, with their intimidating, almost human presence, are equally transcendental. These stones appear to have life. Their carved surfaces seem to want to tell a story that transcends time through generations. Etchings that speak of Tiwanaku wisdom in both artistic and intellectual form. In 1932, the American archaeologist Wendell Bennett discovered the largest and most important monolith in the Tiwanaku culture. This piece is named in his honor, Bennett. His discovery marked a before and after in the history of Tiwanaku, as Bennett supported his findings on science and astronomy. At almost 8 meters high, weighing 20 tons, and with a carved surface of 32 square meters, it reveals a wealth of information, such as how these 365 areas represent a present-day full year, including winter and summer solstices. Their hands close to their chest hold a sacred vessel and one tablet of a hallucinogenic substance based on a plant called wilka. This substance was used only by the elite of Tiwanaku wise men to enter a state of trance. Bennett is the Tiwanaku piece that is kept in the Tiwanaku Museum, where it continues telling its ancient story through time. Throughout our tour of Tiwanaku, one can't help but wonder how these huge stones were moved. For this reason, we decided to continue our exploration of the artificial canal of Tiwanaku.
Another highlight of the Tiwanaku culture is their knowledge of hydraulics. This, for example, is an artificial canal handmade by men many centuries ago. It has a width of about 12 meters and a height of almost 3 meters. It connects Lake Titicaca to Tiwanaku. All the large stones were transported from the quarries to Tiwanaku by way of this canal on handmade barges.
This extremely long canal, which was built by Tiwanaku laborers, was the transport route for boats made of reeds, just like floating islands. They were able to bear the weight of the tons of stones used for the construction of the temples in Tiwanaku.
Then what distance are we talking about? What is the size of this canal?
Approximately 20 kilometers long from Lake Titicaca to the vicinity of Tiwanaku. At least 8 meters wide and 2.4 meters deep.
At least.
That is the minimum depth. Enough to build some sort of obstacles, that is, dams, so they could raise the level, fill it up with water, which starts to stagnate. and then to be able to transport or slide the stones or blocks to Tiwanaku.
So is this a similar principle, the one used on the Panama Canal, for example?
Of course, this is something that has been superior to the Panama Canal for centuries, right? So this is a sophisticated knowledge of hydraulic engineering.
By ingeniously making good use of the power of water, they managed to travel kilometers carrying raw materials. Being a sun-centered culture, Tiwanaku sought something that would shine as the sun does. This then meant that gold was the precious metal that elevated people of high rank and adorned important structures. When the sun lit up the golden pieces, they shone as brightly as the sun itself.
Gold was the sweat of the sun, the principal god of this culture.
The use of gold leaf was combined with semi-precious stones, pieces that were used on the head, shoulders, chest and wrists, which increased the stature of the highest authorities who ruled Tiwanaku.
The crowns are the objects that were worn, the personal ornaments that were put on by the members of the ruling elite, priests or heads of state, and show various techniques that the goldsmiths of Tiwanaku had perfected. Laminating, trimming, embossing, and engraving.
In the temples, there were many stone pieces with gold incrustations.
In Tiwanaku, evidence has shown that gold was used to adorn temples.
This is one piece, a perfectly polished stone which has a characteristic that you can see here. It has an absolutely perfect depth and has these holes to which pieces of gold and gold leaf were riveted. In this civilization, in Tiwanaku, there were many of the pieces that were coated with gold. It was the culture of the sun, so it was a remarkable sight to see a man of Tiwanaku enhanced resplendently in gold and shining in the sun.
Numerous pieces of gold were looted in colonial times, and in some cases pieces were melted down and sold on the black market. Others were purchased by illegal collectors, and those that were found and retrieved are stored and exhibited in the Gold Museum in La Paz, Bolivia. We have reached the top of a mountain where we see in the distance a small island called Pariti in the southwest of Lake Titicaca. Gerardo, our guide, has invited us to go on board his boat so that he can take us to the newly constructed ceramic museum. After an hour of sailing on Lake Titicaca, we arrived at Pariti Island and we made our way to the Ceramic Museum. Pieces that were discovered in 2004, in what has been the most significant find in the last 50 years, are exhibited here.
We are on Pariti Island in the middle of the Lake Titicaca at the most important ceramic museum of Tiwanaku culture.
These portrait vessels show the social and cultural diversity. Here, we clearly see the variety of ethnic background in their features. We see that it depicts important people in the civil society. We also see that the fauna was represented and taken into account. Among these portraits, we see this finely shaped and painted vessel depicting a rattlesnake.
During 2 seasons at this site, we managed to collect 2 sacks of ceramics All of the pottery was broken because it was part of a ritual that had taken place 1,000 years before. A ritual in which the pieces, beautiful pieces, were all destroyed as a part of an offering to the gods.
The wrinkled face of old age, a duck in one of his arms, and red poncho. He is the Lord of the Ducks, a piece of great value in the field of archaeology that demonstrates the integration and respect between the Tiwanaku people and their natural environment. This strange being is in a state of trance. After having consumed hallucinogenic plants, he is transforming into a cougar. We see his hands turned into paws, and in between his legs a feline tail emerges.
This is without a doubt an important person. I presume that it is a priest. There is a transfiguration of character which, of course, is caused by his drug state, because priests usually ate hallucinogenic plants.
Is this a human tomb?
Yes, a pre-Columbian tomb that we found when we were starting to build the museum. When we found the grave, we made it part of the museum. Here, we can see part of his skull plus 2 ceramic offerings. The tomb is possibly more than 1,000 years old, because there aren't any other remains or bones. There is only a part of the skull and the offerings that are made to the dead.
Tiwanaku ceramics were used in sacred rites and as offerings to their dead. Remarkable pieces created 1,200 years ago show different aspects of everyday life and the social hierarchy within Tiwanaku society. On what seems to be an endless plain, we see clear signs of the most important source of food production. We are in the Tiwanaku Sukakolyus. Close to 200,000 hectares of extensive highland area were devoted to the cultivation of food, with agricultural technology that began a little over 4,000 years ago.
This is something rarely seen, the ability to simultaneously cultivate 200,000 ha is something that cannot be done without scientific control of the environment.
We are in Coanipamba. It is a valley located 20 kilometers in a straight line from Tiwanaku. People of Tiwanaku settled here and built their sukakolyos for extensive farming in order to support thousands of people with potato crops.
We still see traces of their existence, the ridged walls and irrigation canals which Tiwanaku farmers used to plant and harvest.
Agriculture was Tiwanaku's primary source of economic sustenance. The reason for their success as a culture and as an empire was the system of raised fields or ridges, the sukakoyus. This was the most advanced technological system ever created in the ancient Americas.
The extensive fields were irrigated by these main canals, which were built by the organization and discipline and long periods of labor of thousands of Tiwanaku workers. Gravity would take the water to the main and secondary channels that were responsible for bringing it to the more distant fields, creating an efficient water distribution network.
The ridged walls for the crops were built by hand, and the irrigation system created a microclimate with a temperature of about 3 degrees Celsius.
In 1993, experimental work was done with the rural communities in the Bolivian highlands to test the operation of sukakolyos. This process included the rehabilitation of soils in the ruins, planting, flood irrigation, and harvesting the product. The experiment resulted in the production of high-quality potatoes and a quantity that was 10 times that produced with current traditional farming techniques. Quinoa and potatoes, as they are known throughout the world today, were first cultivated in the Tiwanaku Sucacoyos.
Many varieties of potatoes were produced. One of the most important crops was quinoa, which is a very high source of protein. They also cultivated a lot of bitter potatoes that were dehydrated to make chuño and starch, both of which kept well for months.
Agriculture was the greatest economic power for the people of Tiwanaku for more than 2,700 years, until climate change on the planet defeated their technology and astronomical knowledge. The splendor of 27 centuries was extinguished with a more than 100-year drought, and darkness reigned in the city of the sun. This theory was studied and tested by researchers Alan Colata and Charles Ortloff in their work Tiwanaku and its Hinterland, which showed that in 1150 AD there was a severe imbalance in the global climate. While there were torrential rains in Europe, in the Andean highlands and what is now Bolivia, drought ravaged the land. Tiwanaku was devastated, and this led to its demise. And so began the march back. The people of Tiwanaku scattered and founded small villages in the mountains of the highlands. Mountains provided shelter and protection, and now our production team takes a new direction in the exploration. We are in search of the subterranean city of the Andes, Himoko, the final Tiwanaku dwelling. We moved to Apoquin, a small town in the department of La Paz, Bolivia, near Lake Titicaca, to start the ascent to the lost city. Below zero temperatures and heavy snow gave us way to start exploring on foot towards the underground city of Tiwanaku. After walking a little over 3 hours through the icy mountains, one could spot the first signs of the Tiwanaku citadel.
We have reached a height of 12,500 feet. We can see the underground small city. It is called Himoko.
We're on the first floor platform below. So this type of construction is starting to appear.
Some remains of door lintels of houses give us a clear idea of a city built on the mountainside. All made in stone, the quality of the work is not the same as before. The splendor and art are no longer their priority. It seems that they are now trying to survive. Tiwanaku pottery keeps drawing attention at every step.
This is a base of a very ancient ceramic piece from the people who lived here. The people who build, prepare food, etc.
Long and high stone walls show some kind of protection and organization of the city, which not only sheltered the people, but also protected them from the invasion of potential enemies looking for food.
This is a wall that has kilometers.
Yes, it is a wall that surrounds almost everything. At least 2/3 of the hill. We're in a place that may have been exclusive for defense. because there are 1 and 2 walls and their entrances.
Miles of rocks, now scattered around, are the remains of some parts of the protection walls. Other sectors still remain standing. There are many houses the Tiwanaku people made after the fall of the great state. It is presumed they remained in this place for about 200 years more. The road is completely irregular and difficult to access, but we are reaching the top of the mountain at about 14,800 feet above sea level, where we find some corridors and trails that lead us to the city main square. It is really amazing. There was a great human movement here sometime in the past. There was social life. They made plans and decisions.
We are inside a house. This is the gate, and the level where I'm standing on is very high because the roof has collapsed. And we are at least 3 or 5 feet high.
Making a topographic survey and a digital reconstruction, this mountain would be fully populated, organized and protected in the Tiwanaku style, with a population of about 8,000. But we were surprised when we see that the rocks beneath our feet are actually the roof that covers a complex network of underground connections and small, almost imperceptible accesses. But they actually open the door to a new stage of mystery and enigmas.
We are in a hallway, and we are about to enter an underground house.
Finally, we found the underground citadel of the Andes.
We are in a house built below the surface. This was built when people left Tiwanaku.
Yes, it is part of the Manners who spoke Aymara. We are talking about the year 1200 onward.
How long did they live in these houses?
At least up to the year 1400.
200 years.
1400, 1420, yes.
I see here a very high room. The ceiling is approximately 2 meters 90 centimeters high. And if I sit and I lie down, I can fit perfectly.
Just as small modern apartments, here under the surface, we clearly see the distribution of rooms where the ancient Tiwanaku people lived.
This small room is likely a small pantry where they kept food or clothes. I see that the walls are solid despite not having any kind of cement, and they reached the ceiling. And these huge stones, which act as roofs, how are they made?
These protruding stones are the molding on the layering, meaning that the stones come out from the sides like this, and at the top they lay on some slabs that complete the set.
Warehouses, kitchens and bedrooms sheltered and were part of their daily lives.
Now this is a small room clearly connected with the one behind because there is a door here blocked by dirt, but we can perfectly see the other room from here. The height of the ceiling is about almost 3-4 meters.
4 meters.
4 by 8 meters. It is a really big room.
Along with underground dwellings, there are new passages that are part of the complex underground network and communicate and protect the Tiwanaku people.
I have traveled more than 12 meters of the tunnel, and it's really amazing. The walls are perfectly made, like these great stones that support the roof. This was a tunnel in which men were protected at night. Underground houses were made to protect children and women and the elderly. Outside houses are for the men to live in, big, strong men, almost warriors and mazes, connecting with other tunnels. It is fascinating and something that has never been seen here. I'm leaving now.
During the expedition, many other underground rooms could not be visited because of the high risk of landslides and mudslides. In the year 2009, an earthquake destroyed much of the structures of the Tiwanaku city. We have witnessed an unprecedented discovery. It is certainly the missing link to complete the story of Tiwanaku. It is the year 1150 after Christ. The eternal city has ceased to exist. They left us 2,700 years of history. History with extensive knowledge of astronomical science, economic power, hydraulic engineering, and science passed on through their perpetual iconography, expression, religion, and social customs. A witness of their work, discipline, and astounding strength to survive underground. Tiwanaku is the origin, splendor, and disappearance that will endure as an important link in human history. After more than 200 years, in 1440 AD, arises from Tiwanaku roots Manco Capac, a warrior leader that crosses Lake Titicaca towards the island of the sun to found a new empire. This time, the warrior founded the Inca Empire. But that is another story.